really, I guess the question is why are we doing an RPA day? At SmartBridge, for those of you who may not know who we are, we're an enterprise business consulting firm, and we partner with our clients to really help define and bring to life their digital agendas. And right now, one of the topics that is frequently on those digital agendas is Robotic Process Automation, or RPA. So the following question to that is, well, what's RPA, right? And we have a lot of people here that will help explain that, but if I could give kind of a textbook style definition of what RPA is, it's a form of business process automation using technology based on the concept of software bots or AI workers, and it's used to execute high volume, rule-based, trigger-oriented system tasks. So that's a lot of words, but another way to say it is, it's really software sitting behind a computer screen running software. And the reason you do that is to achieve faster, more consistent results 24/7 in a very consistent fashion. So that's kind of the layman's term definition of RPA. And so what I want to do is just talk through very briefly some of the use cases where RPA could be used. So anytime you've got repetitive data entry tasks, anytime you have users who are swivel chairing between different systems, moving data from one system to another, those are very common use cases for that. Similarly, data migrations, data conversions, where there's a lot of repetitive activities where people are using systems. Similarly, generating reports, recurring statements, things like that. And then we're actually going to hear about several other use cases from our panel about how RPA could be used. And so that brings me to our esteemed panel, so I'd like to introduce them to you now. From my left, we have George Danner, data scientist, futurist, author, and the CEO of Business Laboratory. We've got Kamal Ambarchi, managing venture executive at Chevron Technology Ventures. We have Steve Fine, senior manager of internal controls and business processes at Buckeye Partners. And we have Sanat Nileshwar, who is a senior director at SmartBridge and one of my colleagues. So with that, our first panelist to share his point of view on automation and RPA is George Danner. George is the author of the Executive's How-To Guide to Automation, sitting right here to my left, Mastering AI and Algorithm-Driven Business. Prior to founding Business Laboratory, George held various executive positions in varying industries, earning the reputation as a subject matter expert in the space of innovation. So with that, let me hand it over to George.
Well, thank you, Matthew. I appreciate that very much, and welcome to the audience, whatever time of day you happen to be in. This is a great day. This is a great day in history to be around and working in this area. Today, we have an almost limitless list of the art of the possible with respect to technology. So we can do things, we can solve business problems that we couldn't even conceive of even as recently as 5 to 10 years ago. So it's a great time in history. And looking back in history, which I've done in doing the research for my several books, I've had to go back several centuries and look at these inflection points in history. And clearly, what technology has done for the last 2,000 years is it's created winners and it's created losers. So those companies that are really paying attention to some of these trends and really becoming students of business are the ones that are going to be winners, because they're going to be able to look forward and look at some of these techniques, technologies, and methodologies and exploit them. The ones that don't risk being disrupted by other players. And all you have to do is pick up the newspaper on any given day, and you will see examples of long-term legacy companies considered very strong, very financially robust, that are being disrupted. So the message to the audience today is to pay attention and to look at some of these things, to think about some of these things that we can do, and to start to apply them in meaningful ways in important industries. So one of the things that I get to do in my job is I get to travel all around the world and talk to senior leaders at a number of different companies. And I pay attention to the things that they say over and over again across all of those industries, across all of those countries. And the word that they have presented to me quite frequently in the last several years is this one word, which is automation. I mean, nearly every sector is being impacted right now by automation. Automation has become the strategic word rolling around in boardrooms everywhere. And the idea is really about doing more with the same. Can I produce more product next year versus this year with the same number of people? And we're seeing that in certain industries we wouldn't have expected to see. Take the trucking industry. Right now there's a 15,000 truck driver shortage in the United States. A study came out recently saying that that gap is going to grow to 150,000 driver shortage in as little as 10 years. What's going to happen? How do we solve that problem? Look at the places where truck drivers are being trained. They're not producing enough drivers to meet the demand. Now, don't take that as a story about the trucking industry. That is really a prototype for every industry that's looking for talent. The real answer, the sustainable answer to some of these gaps that we have in our labor markets is increased automation. There's been a lot said about automation taking away workers' jobs. I don't see that. What I do see in its place, though, is a strong drive to raise the productivity of every company. That pressure has led to, again, doing more with the same people that you have. And what I've observed is that senior leaders are deeply interested in not getting rid of their people, but actually cherishing the human beings that they have, because when you have to do more with the same people, that makes your people more important, not less. So people who should know better are talking about mass unemployment. I don't believe that's going to happen. My panel with me here, we're going to talk a lot about that as we go. But the general subject of automation is present on the minds of every leader simply because the economics of automation is too compelling to ignore, and there's nothing that we can do to stop it. I can't stop it. You members of the audience, you can't stop it. It's going to happen. So the question is, how do we get well prepared for this new wave that's coming at us, which is going to be punctuated by increasing levels of automation that we have never seen before? Here comes the subject of RPA, Robotic Process Automation. Now that's just one sliver, one slice, if you will, of the whole automation spectrum. It's an on-ramp, in my words, it's an on-ramp to the idea of taking a function that is largely governed by human beings and moving that to more algorithmic treatment. In its simplest form, very simplest form, you could think of, let's take HR. You have an HR function. You've just hired 50 people. You have 50 pieces of paper on your desk, and now you have to go to your your HR web application, take one of those forms, type that information into the web page, hit submit, and repeat that 50 times. What RPA can do is take the electronic versions of those 50 paper forms and pretend or trick the web application into thinking it's dealing with a human when in actuality it's dealing with a script. That is the very simplest version of RPA that we can talk about, and that was actually in HR loaded with a lot of administrative tasks like this. This was one of the first domains for automation. But you know, the other thing about RPA is that it's not standing still. That industry is not going to simply be an emulator of a human. What's going to happen with RPA is it's going to be a platform for much more intelligent functions than typing things into a web form going forward. In fact, I believe that RPA is going to be a platform for things that involve judgment and reasoning and risk and uncertainty. So imagine going from a simple thing, and Matthew mentioned repetitive tasks, repeatable tasks. Yes, that's exactly where RPA is sitting today. But what if you had an RPA algorithm that could help with strategic planning or budgeting, some of these more sophisticated tasks? So don't think of RPA as a snapshot today, the relatively simple, straightforward programming script that performs an important function. Think of it as a stair step toward much more sophisticated layers being added onto RPA. And so to the audience, those of you who are sitting in these organizations that desire to go from point A to point B, from point A where you are to point B where you're better, faster, cheaper, you should pay attention to RPA as the first step in a series of steps toward an automated future, not a one and done activity. And my hope is that the people who intelligently embrace RPA will also embrace the whole subject of automation and become one of the winners in those stories that we talk about, rather than one of the losers that attempts to catch up. So that is kind of my opening overview of RPA. I'm really excited to be here. I'm grateful to SmartBridge for the invitation to talk. I have some wonderful panel members here joining me, and so I'm looking forward to talking through all of the important issues that are raised by this new technology that has dropped in our laps and what we can do about it. It raises important challenges. It raises some risks. It raises a lot of questions. It raises even ethical concerns. These are the kind of things that we want to talk about at ground zero today as we sit here in the middle of 2019, because a lot of the discussion that we will have will be a microcosm of the kinds of challenges that you all in the audience will face as you go forward into an automated future.
Awesome. Thanks, George. Well, I think, as you've done your research in the book, I guess talk to me about examples you've seen of, you mentioned a couple times doing more with the same. So can you provide some more concrete examples of how you've seen companies that are those successful ones who have really done that well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one interesting one from healthcare was a really interesting one, where I was working with a company that performed surgeries, a certain kind of surgery, and they did many of these surgeries every year. And what did they have? They had a human being actually scheduling these surgeries. And if any of you have been patients before to schedule your surgery, you talk to a human. That human says, okay, I think I've got a slot here, or I've got a slot there, and which do you choose? That is an extraordinarily complicated function, more than meets the eye, actually, because that person who's scheduling the surgery has to square that with the availability of the surgeon. The previous surgery has to be cleaned. The surgery room has to be cleaned in order for that new surgery to happen. There are certain healthcare guidelines as to what surgeries can follow what surgery, the other surgeries. And what was happening was this clinic had grown from doing, say, 50 surgeries a week to doing 200 surgeries a week. Now, did that mean the problem was 4 times bigger than it was? No. The nature of our businesses mean that when we add more to the same system, we're actually adding it exponentially. When we did the calculation, going from 50 surgeries to 200 surgeries made the scheduling problem 16 times more complicated than it was before. And we're still asking one human to do that task. So what we helped with was taking that person and the way that person scheduled these surgeries, the rules of thumb that she used every day, all day long, and taking it out of her brain and putting it into an algorithm. Today, that surgery center uses an algorithm largely to do all of that scheduling for them, and the human is there to provide an important QA process and a tweaking role on top of that system. So that's a human being that hoping and praying that person never leaves, because that person is an expert at not scheduling, but using the scheduling algorithm and tweaking it appropriately.
That's a good one. I like that. Well, I'll open to the other panelists. I guess, where do you guys see some of the kind of early value drivers for RPA? Where could the audience, folks on the live stream and in the room, where might they kind of look for those pockets of value with RPA?
Sure. A lot of the customers that we are speaking with, they're seeing the value coming in a lot of back office functions, where you've got finance, payroll, HR functions that are doing things manually. And a lot of companies have legacy systems, right? So you are doing things, you've got the secret sauce built into your system. So you really don't want to migrate from your legacy system that has the secret sauce into a new ERP system just because you get some additional efficiencies as a result of that. But by using RPA in converting some of these manual processes and you're utilizing that secret sauce that is already in your existing ERP system, automating those tasks and achieving those kind of efficiencies, I think those are some of the use cases that are there. I mean, this could be things like, accounting functions, whether you're doing payroll functions, where you're getting timesheets and you're doing validation of timesheets, or even in some of our customers who are doing restaurants. We work with a lot of restaurant organizations, and just auditing of their daily operations. So things like, hey, am I giving too many discounts at my restaurant? Am I getting the right sales points related to the restaurant? So there are a lot of different use cases and low-hanging fruits that can be used to apply automation towards.
And I would add to that, when you really think about today's work environment, we have a very low unemployment rate. We have a lot of people in organizations that have turnover. Well, RPA is a fantastic tool to reduce the transition time it takes for individuals to learn the role, because there are tasks that take away from the value-added responsibilities that people have. So therefore, if you leverage RPA for sort of manual tasks or tasks that quite honestly might be too complex to transition, taking that away, now you have a more effective person, more comfortable in a role, stepping into that role. And quite honestly, taking that responsibility away from those people makes them more effective, makes your organization more efficient, and ultimately that talks to the productivity that George brought up earlier.
So when I hear productivity improvements, I think maybe it's the pessimistic side of me, but I think, oh, this means staff reduction and it means, layoffs and lots of displaced workers. But I've also heard the counterpoint where, no, it actually allows people to do kind of these higher value tasks. So I guess anybody on the panel kind of want to give their point of view on that?
Yeah, sure, Matthew. Real quick, it all depends on how you look at your business. If you think that your business is opportunity limited, there's no more work to do, and that becomes an issue of efficiency and redundancy. But if you are, I don't know any business that they claim that they address all their total addressable market. So when you are looking at increasing more productivity, reaching to new markets, increasing your efficiency, you need all the tools that you can. So it is up to the leaders to understand what the opportunities are there and why they think that they are limited and overcome that. And in the process, use RPA, digital other innovations, to move forward and increase the efficiency and their market share or creating new markets itself.
I would also add that in the corporate world, we struggle with data versus information. RPA can really reduce the amount of time that we spend working with data so that we could shift time using information to make more value-added decisions. So if you can take the back office time of consolidating information and shift it, all of a sudden, not only are you improving the organization, but you're also building skills in the individuals within your organization. And that's really one of the benefits of RPA, is elevating the people in your organization.
Stephen, I couldn't agree more. In fact, I would urge those of you in the audience to try this experiment that I have, which is get up from your desk and walk the halls. Just walk through the halls of the company and take a sort of a mental inventory of what everybody is doing. What are they doing? You know, typically they're tapping numbers into a spreadsheet, or they're creating an email, or they're doing an extraordinary percentage of their time is devoted to these rote mechanical tasks. It's incredible. And I'll give you a practical example. Working with a company that is in the marine logistics business of moving product on barges. And we ran into the planning group, and the planning group is there to take this product that's this chemical that is produced, put it on barges, and move it to a market where it can be sold. That's what they do all day long, every day. So they're calling up shippers, they're arranging barges, they're looking at the production in the tanks and making all of that happen. So we asked them one time, we said, do you ever look at your ability to send this product to point A versus point B, because maybe at point A you get a little bit better price than point B? You know what their answer was? No, we don't have time to do all that because we're too busy trying to figure out just how to get that volume out of the manufacturing plant. So that tells me that what Stephen is suggesting is absolutely correct, in that there's all kinds of value-added things we could be doing that we're simply not doing. So taking a good, solid inventory of what anybody is doing at any given point in time will show you to what extent we're still constrained by and chained by those time-consuming rote mechanical tasks.
That's good stuff. I know there's no company, to Kamal's point, there's no company that is tapped out, right? I don't believe that. And so I think it is about doing more with less, and it's about elevating the entire company's game. So that's good stuff. So I want to move on to our next panelist, Steve Fine, as a senior manager at Buckeye. Steve drives business performance improvement initiatives that include automation while leveraging extensive experience in program management, staff development, strategic planning, budgeting, and finance management. So Stephen, the floor is yours.
Sure. Buckeye Partners is a midstream oil company. So it's a combination of pipelines, terminals, we have some refining. We have a lot of different flavors inside of our company. So we have a lot of different responsibilities to make sure that we can deliver what our unit holders require. Our journey with RPA started out as an innocent conversation with my corporate controller and a few of us in a room where he had an experience with RPA and wanted us to investigate. So we started down a journey not only to just understand RPA, but listen to what the industry had. And at the beginning, in 2017, it was still early, but we had people in the energy business that explained it, and we saw what the value was. The value of RPA is not just, as George remarked, it's not about removing processes, it's about driving value. It's about redirecting value. So we started on a pilot. And for those of you that have done a pilot, you always walk in with great ideas and you bite off a little more than you could chew. And we did. But the great thing about the pilot is it was successfully implemented, but we learned from it. And what we learned from the pilot was, quite honestly, that this was not a typical type of project. RPA in its current iteration is a point and click strategy. You need to understand exactly what you're doing. The example I always give when I explain people about RPA is, you woke up this morning and you walked out the door. Can you tell me exactly the 10, 15, 20 steps that you performed today? Do you do it the same way every single time? RPA is about driving judgment out and following a linear path in today's environment. So we started to go on that journey, and we decided as an organization that we had to develop two things simultaneously before we jumped in with both feet on RPA. The first piece was creating a center of excellence, a governance strategy. And the purpose of that governance strategy was to step through the entire process and anticipate what the needs of the organization were. When you think about it, it really comes down to three pieces. People needing to understand the process, a COE assessing the process and providing feedback, and then ultimately modeling and delivery into production. So we built that entire framework considering all facets of the organization and the culture that we have here at Buckeye. And we were successful. The three people that really ran the RPA project in its current state, myself, I'm responsible for the functional side, the processes. Eric Gleason is responsible for the actual IT delivery process and does a fantastic job. Brian Sipes, who works with my supervisor and I, is responsible for training. We had to get three people to own those basic pieces, otherwise everything would get muddied. On top of that, as I talk about training, we needed to build an infantry. We needed a force of people that were going to be engaged in RPA. Other organizations that I've spoken to focus on building a little center of excellence that has 3 or 4 people that are delivering processes 24/7. That is a great idea for some organizations, but not for Buckeye. For Buckeye, our foundation is about employee empowerment and eliminating waste. And what is a better way to drive value is to give the power to the individuals that are owning these processes. So we developed a Buckeye certified RPA program that addresses the process piece to help people understand the gravity of the process change, teach them process improvement, and build the functional requirements necessary to execute a successful RPA program. The second part is the modeling, the development. What we did is we gave them 9 intensive weeks, not full-time, of stepping through learning. We leveraged UiPath. We used their certification program. We added lab examples. We wanted people to be ready so that when they graduate, that they can impact the organization immediately. And the results are that we have, as of July 1st, we will have 10 people fully functionally trained in the process and the development side of RPA. By the end of the year, our estimate is 20. And as we grow, we are going to have more people in more departments affecting change, because it's not about one specific group, it's about the entire organization.
That's great. I think, kind of hearing the journey from really twinkle in somebody's eye and actually turning into reality is pretty cool. I guess the first question I want to ask you is now that you're moving down the RPA path, and it sounds like you've got some great growth trajectory as far as the number of practitioners within your organization, chances are you've also run into some potential roadblocks. So can you talk to us about some of those roadblocks that you see and maybe some of the actions you're taking to, I guess, ensure they don't hamper the progress?
Sure. I mean, during the training process, we have business users that are learning how to, in essence, code. So we have to have the right support function in place to make people comfortable. We have people representing many departments, whether it's HR or engineering, what have you. Some of these people have never done this before. And what we had to do is anticipate each step of the way, how we could properly support them, because confidence is very important in a training process. I know I hit a wall or two during our training process. But the next part is engagement. As people roll off and become certified in our training program, how do we keep them engaged? People have so many responsibilities. We need the commitment for them to carry it forward. It's great that you have a diploma, but if you don't use it, why were you there? Same concept here. We need to train people, and then we need, as the center of excellence, to create that engagement, that people have the thirst for it, but also one level above, that their managers want them to deliver. And if you combine those two, you will have a successful organization.
So would you say that this is a kind of a top-down initiative? It sounds like maybe the initial implementation was. Do you see it as a top-down expansion, or do you see it more of a grassroots, people hear about the promise and delivery of RPA, and it kind of expands, kind of bottoms up?
I think it's a combination of both because you can't do one without the other. So an example is when we try to recruit people, we bring their manager in and we show them one of the examples that they'll perform in the training. And the visualization of that solution is really what can close the deal. And that's important. If you don't have management support, no matter how good a person is, if that manager is redirecting activity to that person, then there's no ability for them to perform RPA. So we have to take care of both sides to make sure we have the engagement, but we also have the support. And we know that we have it in our accounting organization because our controller is committed to process change. Our CIO is committed to process change. And together, they're supporting this for their departments. Our job is to push it out beyond those two groups.
So we've talked about process change, but also, you know, a topic I hear being brought up is compliance. You know, whether it's process compliance or other types of compliance. So can anyone speak to, you know, I guess some of the benefits of RPA and I guess how it can assist a company become more compliant?
That's a really good question, Matthew. I think, you know, from a compliance perspective, I mean, there are different factors to consider, right? So one is, you know, are you meeting the regulatory requirements of, you know, the process that is there? So in a lot of instances, you have the regulatory requirements are highly manual in nature because you have to go to these government websites or produce these paperwork you're just mandatory required because of the process that demands. Using something like RPA and automation that allows you to ensure that all the different requirements related to that regulatory need has been addressed. So you can check mark everything that is done. You're making sure that you're getting the consistent quality of the information that you're providing. And then, you know, because of that, you probably will get your approvals faster or, you know, things like that. So that is one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is just the audit nature of what RPA can do for you. So the way RPA implemented in most organizations is you're mimicking a certain job function. So, you know, for example, Stephen talked about doing it in accounting. So the bot that they probably created is a accounting bot. And all that bot can do is do accounting activities that it is programmed to do. So when an auditor looks at the actions taken by the bot, they can see that these are the specific transactions that were affected by the bot, right? So it can't do anything more than what is programmed to do. So from an audit perspective, you know, you're meeting those regulatory requirements as well.
Maybe real quick, Ed. The benefit is also for the regulatory compliance group analyzing it. So I will venture, I'll take a leap here and venture to say that probably for IRS it's a lot easier to audit electronic filings than a paper filing in there. And maybe you can consider those companies that are helping you with your electronic filing as an RPA company at a certain stage. So there is benefits on the regulation as well because it's a repetitive task and they know how the bot works. So they know how the data comes in instead of people filling in the form and submitting in there. So there's all the value on that side as well. You want to make sure that, you know, the IRS is ready to take the electronic filing so that you have the compliance or equivalent of it for the oil and gas operations midstream for us. I think that there's efficiencies on both sides of the equation.
Yeah, I would also say that if you program a bot to perform something, it's much less variance and deviation than the human form.
The key there, I guess, would be to train it right, because I imagine if you've got something automated happening a lot faster than maybe a human could do it, you also could have really bad outcomes very quickly as well.
But it is consistent.
Good point. Good point. All right, well, let's move on. I guess next to provide kind of his perspective on automation and really investment in technology innovation overall is Kamal Ambarchi. As Managing Venture Executive at Chevron, Kamal is responsible for the oversight of corporate venture capital activities and uses that platform to integrate new technology solutions into the company's operations. He's held various upstream responsibilities in development, reservoir engineering, strategic planning, business development, and technology management. So I'm excited to hear what Kamal shares.
Thanks, Matthew. In my role, my job is to create suppliers to Chevron. So, to solve the technology problems, we invest in startup companies and help them grow and come to a point that they could be great suppliers to Chevron. And I also want a great exit at the end and make more than our money, the multiples. The reason I'm interested in robotics process automation at this time is the exciting changes happening. One, as George mentioned and Stephen, it is a beachhead for the digital transformation. When we talk about Industry 4.0, it's a great beachhead for bringing additional digital changes as well, in addition to robotics process automation. And maybe even Industry 5.0. We talk about getting smarter, moving in there, and that could be the platform to build it on, as George mentioned in his opening speech. The other part is that if you look at in the last 2 years, and some of the Smart Bridges partners and some of them are in the room here, with the infusion of venture capital into the RPA startups, them doubling their valuation every 6 months, and some of them reaching to $7 billion. It shows the power of venture capital in this domain. It also shows the timing, from my point of view, is these startups being ready to be a direct supplier to Chevron. As one of the things that Stephen mentioned, I think the RPA is coming to a point that both modeling will be a self-system. So it will be a tool that we can use directly. Because for my investments that I do for Chevron, I look at for direct suppliers to us. And I believe that RPA is getting there. I believe that the RPA-specific industry is open to venture capital implementation, and they have seen the value. It's nice to have a couple of Michael Jordans in there and people to say, you could be like them. And it provides the opportunity for the growth and for us, helping with the transformation that each company needs.
So I guess you talked about RPA investment having increased and more venture capital being put into that. I guess, why do you think that is?
A good question. I don't know the exact answer, but most of the time what works is the timing. So it's the nexus of multiple things coming together. One is the computational power that's needed. The other one is the need. So as George mentioned about when you are resource limited and not opportunity, when you have the gaps, people are looking for creative solutions to do so. And sometimes it is the ability to pause and wait. If they are really busy, trying to ship things and they don't have time to lift their head, if there's an impetus that shows that you can do it better, there are good examples set up that makes it happen. And we do watch each other, right, in different industries or within the industry. And when that breakthrough happens and you see the implementation, you see the value, it's an excellent time. It's a very exciting time. Industry 4.0 happening, open up the area, the door is cracked open, you move in with the RPA, you bring in other digital solutions and make the change happen.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think some of the other factors that really has led to this, the excitement and the explosion and, for adoption of RPA has been some of our vendor partners like UiPath that have actually allowed people to download the software for free and, be able to try things on their own and, try to democratize things that were usually in kind of the IT realm, and so business users have the ability to do things on their own without having to rely on IT. So IT is a great business partner and has to be involved along the way, but it's also in some ways, if there's only reliance on IT, that causes limitations. So by having these approaches or strategies that these vendor partners have done, it allowed the adoption of RPA to be a lot faster.
Before I go to George, I'll give it credit to the venture capital money coming in as well. So that enables you to grow and extend, reach out to the other users, being able to give a taste of what it could do free. And when the Sandhill moves in, Sandhill Road moves in, it really makes a difference.
What we're really seeing, Kamal eloquently pointed this out, is essentially a reinforcing loop, which starts with some venture capital money flowing into the area of RPA. These wonderful tools coming as a result of that. Those tools going into industries where they really are legitimately creating value, which then causes more money to flow back to the other end into venture capital. So that reinforcing loop is why we're having this, all of a sudden, having this rich conversation about RPA, what it can do, what it should do, because we're part of a reinforcing loop. And I see another sort of outer reinforcing loop there as well, in that the investment community, which I'm close to, the particularly private equity that's looking at buying companies at point A and selling them at point B. Venture capital does that as well. How do you do that? How do you move the needle on a company that's already a good performing company? And how do you double their revenues and triple their profits? Well, all the easy, straightforward things have been done already. We're down to now more nuanced strategies to create value in these already well-performing companies. RPA represents one of those levers that we have at our disposal.
I like the term Kamal used. It's a beachhead. And so I guess maybe fitting, since we have, 75 years tomorrow of celebration of D-Day. That was a very large beachhead. But I guess, in terms of the options, the RPA is one lever, as you mentioned. So how do companies, how should they kind of weigh this against some of the other opportunities that are there? Because, digital is permeating everything. It's a question of, well, which way do we go first? So any thoughts on some of the big filters you might run through? And you don't have to speak specifically about what, at Buckeye, what you guys did specifically, but I guess the elements that you considered.
Well, I think it's important to understand what the tools are and what the tools provide. But you also need to also think about what is going to be the future. Right? I'm thinking of a process, and I won't be too specific, about something that we paid for a SQL fix inside of our ERP system that cost us X amount of dollars that we could probably do in RPA right now in about probably 2 to 3 weeks. Right? We weren't aware. And also it was 2016, so RPA was not as robust as it is now. So I think if you combine the forethought of where software is going, matching it with your business needs, understanding the tool at a level that you can see the differences, right? Today in this world, judgment is not going to be part of the RPA solution. But as George said, in 2 years it may be. So maybe you hold off 2 years. Or maybe you do it in something else today. So that's where you look at the ROI and understand where's the value today versus tomorrow.
No, you're right, Stephen. Why RPA first? You get the real value of the digitization when you change your full process, right? And you make more decisions, quicker decisions, not just like the one that you are doing right now. But there is a disruption. RPA is an on-ramp because you can get your current processes and digitize it. And then in the process, though, you always need to think the next step and change it. Why are we doing this? Do you still need, the light sockets that fits the candles? But first you need to fit it into certain process that takes the uptake easier. And then you can change the processes and you're going in there. And as George stated, build on intelligence on top of it, going there.
So I've been involved with a company in the drill ship business. They rent drill ships out. Now, right now, it takes about 180 crew members to run an average drill ship. So 180 people sitting out there on the water running this drill ship. They have this grand vision that they want to get that to 0. An unmanned drill ship, which is an audacious project driven by the CEO who wants, in less than a decade's time, to get to an unmanned drill ship. An amazing option that they chose. There could be very few of those, I understand. But in between a grand ambition like that and where we are today, are people out there, companies out there, who just want to be better. They want to start on this automation journey. Do they start with something as grand as that, or can they start with something easier, cheaper, less intrusive? RPA on the spectrum of automation options that you can do is less expensive, less intrusive, but still creates value. But my hope is that those people who adopt RPA don't consider it a one-and-done activity. Yes, it's creating value, but hopefully it's also setting in motion a path for the company to automate everything, to look under every rock, every conceivable corner of the organization, and say, can that be made better, faster, cheaper, more repeatable? Can we grow it? That it starts this sort of inquisitive process about more and more and more automation. Because if you don't ask those questions, your competitor will be asking those questions, and they will put you at risk. So RPA is a great starting point because it flies a little bit under the radar a bit, and gradually it allows you automation to permeate the company. And at the same time, it's giving you that meta capability of, let's see what else we can, that was valuable, let's see what else we can automate, let's see what other kinds of tools and architectures we can bring to bear on automating other aspects of the company, as Stephen said, possibly including judgment and reasoning.
Awesome. I like it. Well, let's give our last panelist, Sanat Nileshwar, a chance to kind of share his thoughts. Sanat has over 20 years of experience leading technology projects in various industries. He has deeply rooted experience in business transformation with supply chain processes, especially in distribution and food service. And he's well-versed in RPA implementations and leads the RPA practice at SmartBridge. So, Sanat, why don't you share a few words?
Great. Thank you, Matthew. I think, what you heard today from the panelists was, amazing information. And one thing I'll tell you, this is the time for us to adopt RPA. And a lot of organizations there are thinking about RPA. Some of them are doing it. But there are a lot of people, I would say, are more on the fence and waiting for something to happen so that they can start the adoption of RPA. But from what you're hearing from the panel today, you're hearing that the time is now. Now is the time to adopt that. Get off the fence. If you don't, your competition is going to, be adopting RPA and moving forward. I mean, you heard what George was saying. I mean, all the speakers, in fact. There is an opportunity now to, take this by the horns and start adopting some of these low-hanging fruits that you have. Put automation in, start small, take a department, pick up a POC or one or two processes, and then start going up the up the curve and do a pilot and then do adoption. Look at what Buckeye is doing with the COE model that they're moving forward with. The same model may not work for every organization. In some cases, you're looking at more of a centralized model where you have a team that is responsible for that. In other organizations like Buckeye, is getting more federated, where you have people who are embedded in different process areas and doing this. But the point is that the technology is mature now. You can get the benefits, and the ROI is real. So to get people off the fence, SmartBridge has a promotion. So we are looking forward to working with our customers out there, prospects out there, and we want to extend this promotion where we, SmartBridge, will do a POC for 2 processes for a fixed price of $7,500. And this promotion is out there till the end of July, and we're really looking forward to working with several different organizations to get off the fence and moving in this direction.
Awesome. I like it. I was wondering what you do all day, crafting these types of promotions. We do have a question that I want to raise to the panel, and it's a little bit tactical, but it came from our live stream. So how can a company ensure they are using RPA to optimize processes versus using RPA to place Band-Aids on convoluted or inefficient work streams, which can result in unsustainable solutions?
I guess I'll answer.
Yeah.
I've been known to make a lot of little sayings that get under people's skin. One of them that I've been saying the last week is that RPA is basically process improvement hiding inside a piece of software. The reality is that you will understand your process better if you implement RPA than you ever thought you would, because you're going to have to go down to the lowest level. And at that point in time, you're going to be able to assess whether it is optimal. You need to invest the time on the front end to understand the process. Otherwise, you will not be able to execute the solution effectively. And I think that's a natural progression that RPA is bringing that maybe some organizations, prior organizations than when I was at Buckeye, we didn't do a great job of assessing projects because we didn't get our hands as dirty as we should have. RPA forces that and can address the question that you have right there.
I'll just add to that I think my panel members would agree that implementing RPA isn't buy the software and put it in. That there's quite a bit of roll up your sleeves, look at the processes, diagram the processes very carefully, rewire those processes as needed, and then apply the software as almost essentially the last step. There's quite a bit that is a prerequisite to using the actual RPA platform that you're going to use.
So is there anything you guys can share about, I guess, assessing the readiness of whether, you know, my company is a good candidate for using these types of capabilities?
Every company is a good candidate.
Yeah, I think it's more about, is your organization ready mentally to understand their processes at a level that RPA can be a solution. RPA can be a solution for any organization that has processes that have waste.
Yeah, thanks, Steven. In Chevron, we have an RPA COE, and we have 24 or so members of it. And I thought, until I talked to Steven, that we were right at the beginning, and he had done a lot with only 3 members in his COE. The answer is that every organization is ready. You need to bring the right structure and to move forward with it.
Okay. I guess, one other question I'll open up to the panel is, when you're going down this path, like, how do you measure success? How do you know whether you should keep doing this?
That's a great question. I think, from some of the customers that we work with, when you start out in the RPA journey, you do want to create some kind of metrics that you're trying to achieve. You definitely want to, identify what value you're going to create in the organization, what capacity you're going to create, by reducing the amount of manual work, and you're creating capacity for some of these folks to take on other activities. But measuring those, identifying those metrics early and measuring that is really important. And then once you show value to the organization of some of the work that you do with your POCs and pilots, that automatically gets your department heads excited about the other opportunities that exist. And many of these managers, they're somewhat removed from the actual activities that happen on a day-to-day basis, and they may not know all the nitty-gritty around these processes. But having that process discovery and starting that excitement in the organization to get moving is really important. So that should hopefully answer that question here.
So RPA is not and should not be immune to ROI scrutiny. Now, for those companies that are looking to adopt RPA that they haven't before, when they go to build that ROI spreadsheet or whatever they're going to do, look, their assumptions are going to be really wide, and there's going to be a lot of uncertainty. I hope they don't use that uncertainty to say, well, let's not go forward, because it's really all about learning. RPA is subject to the learning curve effects, just like Henry Ford building the Model T. Every year, you get a little bit better at using this powerful capability. But I would definitely promote the idea that Sanat raised, where, look, there are metrics. Those metrics help you build the ROI case. They're going to be pretty loose at first, but gradually, as you learn more, you'll get much more specific about some of these metrics and then drive that into better ROI models as you go up that RPA maturity curve.
I think also from a metric standpoint, one of the areas that we found is it's not just hours saved. It's hours saved, it's frequency. We're finding that a lot of these processes could be run many times because a system is running it in the background, whereas a person didn't have the time to perform that. And we're seeing that again and again. I think the third part is, what are you doing with the time that you saved? What's the value being derived if I remove 10 hours from someone from my team and they're doing value add? What's the ROI of that? So you have to consider all of these pieces. I will use the phrase fuzzy math when you talk about RPA, because there is a lot of value across the board. And if you look at it as just what's the cost savings, you may be missing the larger picture.
I think that is all the time we have for questions. So I guess to kind of bring our RPA day and our live stream event to a close, I want to say thank you to each of our panelists. What you've shared today was insightful for me, I think, in the audience and in our live stream as well. And definitely appreciate you guys participating today. For our live audience and live stream viewers, hope you got out of today what I did, really some solid education to kind of help you along the path for RPA within your organizations. I guess beyond the forthcoming video version that we'll present of this event, SmartBridge has many articles, videos, even a checklist to help companies really get started on RPA. All of those can be found at smartbridge.com/automation. And don't forget the POC that Sanat mentioned, that he shared the promotion. If you want to take him up on that offer, please email info@smartbridge.com from your work email address, and we'll provide you the details on getting started with that. So with that, thank you for everyone participating in RPA Day, and that's a wrap. Thank you.
Good job.